Hello. The link is in the description. Okay. Let me put this on the screen. Let me put this on the screen. That's not it. Hold on. Let's see. Huh. That's weird. Why isn't it showing up? There it is. Okay. Let's do this. Minimize. Okay. I need 2 screens. The link is pinned if you want to join. I want to talk about Daniel 11 is what I want to talk about. I'm hoping Chris will come in here because I was just looking at it. I did a stream on it earlier. Nobody is interested in it. That's fine. But it seems to me people keep pointing, like trying to convince me that Daniel 27 is talking about the Antichrist. It's like, wait a minute. The Antichrist is like, I swear, like people, they don't even realize, they're just like saying, well, it's kind of a type and it's not. It's like, look, if it's a type, then it should lay it out in history and then be a type at the end. But you can't just say like, well, part of that is the type. Well, is it the type or is it the antitype? It can't. When you establish a type, it's usually something happens and it's a miniature microcosm of it, but you don't get to like pick and choose which aspects of what. Well, that's kind of a type and that kind of is, and then this little bit is, and it's like, no. If you have a type of the Antichrist that happens before the new covenant's established, he's not going to type it in the old covenant context. So like the 70th week having it being future, but then saying it's also associated with the 70th or the destruction of the temple in 70 AD because it's a 7-year period. No, that would be a fulfillment. Because the new, it's happening after the fact, after the new covenant's brought in. So to say it's the 7-year war around Jerusalem's destruction, why? And then also in the future, that makes no sense. It's just like, it's not appropriate. Like it's a 7-year war then, and then what, in 1948 too, and then also future. Like this is not how that works. It's not how that works. It's very sloppy, to be frank about it. That's not how antitypes work. You can't just kind of be like, well, it kind of is a type. It's kind of a shadow. I mean, it's like, yeah, there's a recapitulation, but it's not just like willy-nilly. This is not appropriate, period. And I don't know how to explain that to somebody really, other than to just say that. I know that's not going to be a reason that changes anybody's mind, but it's really not appropriate. If the 70th week is detached, which it's not, and you're associating it with the 7-year war around the temple, which I don't know why people like, where's the focus on Jesus in that view? I know it puts him outside of the prophecy, so he fails it, but and then you're not even going to have it like be well, it's associated with the second coming. Okay. But the prophecy isn't about his second coming. And like, how do you get that? Why doesn't the New Testament talk about the 70th week that hasn't happened yet? I mean, that's a big deal. The 70th week has a gap and the text doesn't tell us that, but God put it on hold and then he didn't even know. None of the New Testament writers tell us that. I mean, you got to step logically, not just pushing your view. It's like, if the 70th week was not fulfilled after the 69th, why? And what indication from the text do we have? Nothing. Oh, well, the 1260. Oh, the non-literal 1260 that is not a literal time period at all in Jewish history, that one? No. A lot of stuff's associated with 7s and 3.5 years. No rain in Elijah's day. Maybe that's the fulfillment of it. Because it's 3.5 years, bro. I mean, yeah, that's the sense that something has a type. There's no rain. It is tight in a sense. That is typing the idea, but not like you got to not mix your there's certain ways it can type things in like a sense, but it's not, and then be a stickler about the time period and then super sloppy with like microcosm cyclical versions of it, and that can just be as loosey goosey as you want, and then demand that everything is the literal time period, even though we know literal time never was rendered that way in history. It's just wrong. It's wrong-footed right from the start. What is what I would say. Okay, let me see. Let's see if I can. Maybe Chris said he's not coming. I don't know. It's usually pretty hateful because I'm a heretic. Let's see what he said. Let me see here. He says, my problem with futurism is I can go watch The Omen and then read that into the Bible. And because most people are stupid, they couldn't tell the difference that I'm just reading Omen into the Bible. Yeah, we ask SDAs to have their reality match up to the Bible. We should demand that for the futurists too, that their eschatology matches up to the reality that the Bible can't just believe and have it be true. Oh, we wouldn't want to work for our salvation now, would we? See if he comes. I'm messaging him, so we're watching Praise's channel. Maybe Donnie will show up. Maybe that's him. Maybe he's the one person that's watching right now. Who's out there? Who are you? Who's watching this? I see you. Hoping Chris is gonna come. We'll see. I don't know. Because I think in Daniel, let me pull it up. Daniel 8, I noticed there's 5 times that the word covenant is mentioned in Daniel 11. Twice in Daniel 9, 5 times in Daniel 11. I wonder how many times it's in Daniel 12. Okay. Yeah, I'm really bad at this. I'm learning though how to use this. I'm watching the videos on it, but let's see. Is this the one? Selected studies on prophetic interpretation. Might be that one. Let's see what else. These are heavy reading. This might be a good one for this. Pure scholarly work. Okay, let's see. Commencement date for the 70 weeks, the prophecy of Daniel. I should go over that. The meaning of Kippur in Daniel 9. Daniel 9:24 has Kippur in it. Where is that? I guess that's atonement. It's probably the word for reconciliation in the King James, I guess. Literary form, that's something the futurists don't care about. And theological function in Leviticus, the Day of Atonement is related to the contamination and purification of the sanctuary. That's probably a good one to go over. Conditionality in biblical prophecy with particular reference to apocalyptic. That's probably interesting. I haven't looked at that. Alternative to humanism, justification and judgment. Oh, this is the wrong book. Let's go see what this one is. This one. I think this was it. Yeah. Let's look at the preface if we have a Daniel 11 here. Sorry, Law of Faith. Hey, what's up? Good to see you. Ancient Judgments from the Tabernacle. No, I don't think I want this book. I think it's Let's see if I can find the right one. There's 7 of them. They're like 500 pages each. Revelation. What's that one? Daniel. That's Darkham 2. This might be it. I think it is it. Okay. Let's see if he's coming or not. All right. I'm waiting for Chris to come in because I want to talk to him about Daniel 11 here. I actually don't even need this book probably to talk about it, but might have some stuff to talk about here. Let's see. Editorial synopsis on Daniel 11. Let's see what Shay. I love Shay. He's good. 3 major passages in the visions of 11 and 12. Let's see. Daniel 8 and Daniel 11 are particularly tricky to really be sure about, to be fair. Okay, let's see. Shay did a lot of work. Oh, that's what I want to know about. The 2300 evening and morning is interesting as well from Daniel 8. But let's see what else. Look at the I need to learn that better. I started to read that earlier. Let's see. Daniel 2 and 8 link with 11 and 12. There is an interesting chiastic pattern to the chapters in Daniel in the way the Aramaic and the Hebrew link up, which is kind of interesting. Let's see what else we got here. Frank Holbrook. I guess he's not coming. I don't know. He's not answering me. Maybe he's blocked me. Well, all right. I'll just make my point then. Because people keep pointing to Daniel 11 and trying to say that's how they know Daniel 9:27. Oh, there you are. Yeah, I see you. You can, the link is pinned. Just come in real quick. It'll only take 5 minutes, bro. What I want to ask you. I mean, it'd be fun to talk, but something I was noticing in Daniel 11, I just wanted to see what you make of it. Because I think you probably don't interpret it the same way I do. And so it seems to me the references people make to support futurism would be more difficult for a different version than mine to answer. But for me, because I agree that essentially it is like, I think we should put Jesus at the center, right? And so since Daniel 9 is about Jesus and bringing the new covenant, anything that has any future application, meaning anytime after the new covenant has been substantiated, I think the issue for historicists that think, like, say, my historicism is false and seems like futurism, which I've heard you say before, and I get why you say that, because you're more preterist leaning than Adventist historicists who are partial preterists. Everybody's a partial preterist if they're honest, but because of context. But the thing is, I was reading earlier today that before the Millerite movement, historicists were broken into 2 groups. The ones that agreed, essentially, that came to agree with the idea that Daniel 7 and Daniel 8 are tied together and speaking of the same little horn or not. So I think probably after the Great Disappointment, a lot of historicists abandon the idea that which the Adventists still hold, which was used to be split, and like how they should associate Daniel 7 and 8 and the little horn or not is the same entity. And I read some arguments for why why they should be considered the same entity linguistically and in like all sorts of historical arguments. Oh, there you are. Sorry, I was looking down. Anyways, so for that, I was just saying like it used to be at least split in the sense of how to interpret Daniel 8, because Daniel 8 and 7 do have ties like linguistically, and in they're more the power, the little horn power has similarities, and you can chalk that up for different reasons, it seems. But then it's clear to me that particularly Daniel 8 and Daniel 11 are tied together. So if you say Daniel 8 is just a Antiochus, then that kind of makes it so that chapter 11 is about Antiochus. And there's like, and so like, why does Daniel 7 describe Rome first and then describe the Daniel 8 entity as even more exceedingly great, presumably than in its description? It has like a extra adjective added to the same descriptor as the little horn in Daniel 7. And we know the more powerful entity was Rome, right? And that's the one in 7. We agree on that. So like, it just, why would Daniel 8 come second? Although Daniel 8 is the, written in the other language, right? That's where the break is.
Well, that's how Revelation kind of is. I mean,
people think it's not written at the same time, but
well, see, the SDAs also interpret
and also
Revelation
what's interesting though about, so Daniel 2 through Daniel 7 is written in Aramaic, I guess, or Hebrew. I forget. I'm gonna mix it up. The rest is written in Hebrew or the other one, and so chapter 1 and then chapter 8 through 12 are in Aramaic, I guess, right? And then maybe the other way around. And then 2 through 7 are the other language. But the other interesting thing is that Daniel 1 through 6 is written in the first person, or I believe, and then Daniel 7 through 12 is written in the third person. So it's interesting that the difference between written in third and first person perspectives does not draw the same line of so the first language, the group written in the first kind of language, the Aramaic or whatever, its last one switches to the third person, like the rest of the book written in the other language is in third person. So, and then but the first chapter, which is the other language, the same as the 8 through 12, is also third person though. So it's weird, or something like that. So it's got a weird overlap, but yet difference there. So it's hard to explain, I guess. Do you get what I'm saying? I don't know if you were able to even receive what I just said, but
I just go by almost, there's a lot of atheists that argue.
I'm sorry, dude, I couldn't hear you. My headphones were off and I didn't realize you were talking. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I hear you now.
Okay. So you hear me now?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Dude. All right. Now, here's the thing with Daniel 8 is that, in Daniel 8, 10, and 11, you have atheists arguing that it must have been written later, because how could he possibly predict all those events? So I don't know why, if atheists are arguing that's got to be later, why do Adventists think it wasn't even fulfilled?
Oh, they don't argue for a late date. So,
yeah, but see, what I'm saying is atheists do. They argue for it because they're like, wow, there's so much that matches up to what's happened in history. Because it does match up to Josephus's account and everything. It matches up to all the historical records they have. Yeah, and from my understanding, I haven't looked at these passages. I probably need to, because I was going to look at them, but man, when I started doing my video against SFT and reading his book, he doesn't even have start dates to his prophecy.
I know, right? Yeah.
I mean, dude, okay, I got
it. Says no one understand, bro. Yeah, that's a big problem. I've said that to him many times. I'm like, dude, you don't even attempt to do it at starting it. And then I saw him in the chat, and he was saying like, you guys cook the books. I'm like, excuse me, we cook the books? Like I guess he hasn't listened to my arguments, but I'm like, no, I'm being historically accurate with their actual way they rendered time. I'm like contending with the 4 different decrees and why this is the right one. He doesn't even have a decree. All the early advocates of the 70th week being future at least tried to make it work with Sir Robert Anderson and others by shortening the years to 360 days and then going from it's interesting because the 444 decree possibility, the second Artaxerxes decree, is on the sevens. So it is 14 years after 457. So it could still land. It would land in the middle of a Jubilee Unlike, do you realize that 457 starts a jubilee? That alone is a reason to accept it, really, because the prophecy is 10 jubilees, and they still keep that pattern today of sevens and the jubilee periods. So it literally starts a 50-year jubilee or 50-year jubilee period right there in 457, dude. This is a huge evidence.
What that archaeology site was. I still got to understand that more, but I do know that that's exactly when they would start a year off, right? And it's like right when they're reading the law, and they have all those like they got this certain thing where they got to do it every 7 years and like read the law to all the Jews and everything like that.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. And that's why when Jesus says the acceptable year of the Lord, that's because it's a new start of a new Shemitah, a new set of sevens. That's what that language is associated with, the 7 cycles. When he reads it in the temple, and then he says, and he reads the, he's like quoting that this scripture is fulfilled, the acceptable year of the Lord. That language was associated with the Jubilee celebration stuff. And I believe that was on
when he gets crucified.
No, that's when he's baptized and goes into the temple in the wilderness for 40 days, like in Luke at the beginning of Mark and Luke, I think, and John even a little bit. Because that's how like the Gospels start, like at his baptism, several of them, right? Pretty much.
Okay, so that would take care of the acceptable year of the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a jubilee.
I believe and it's also probably maybe because it's also Tishri 1, but which is they're blowing.
Well, that's when you would start it. So yeah,
right. It would be that would be the first of the year, which I believe is not a coincidence that I believe he was born on Tishri 1 and 3 BC, but because in all that like CJ was saying in his video, I was like, dude, Tishri 1 is the Feast of Trumpets, and it's associated with like events of all like the miraculous births in the Old Testament, like all the different stories with miraculous birth. So that's interesting too. And there's like a tradition in like the early church about like a prophet, and I think in Jewish history actually, I think that's what it was, that like prophets are born on the day they die, or like the day they do something significant. It's like the same on their birthday and stuff. And there's kind of like a weird, I forget exactly how that goes, but that's kind of like a weird concept that's been talked about in commentaries and stuff. But anyway, so Daniel 11 is what I wanted to show you really quick, and then just whatever you want to talk about if you have time. But so because people keep wanting to associate like the quote of the covenant in Daniel 11, they go to 11:22 first, right? Which is the first. There's 5 times covenant is mentioned in Daniel 11, twice in Daniel 9. That's it. There's no other covenant in the King James anyway. Okay, chapter 9, it's first mentioned when Daniel's praying about the covenant of mercy, for his namesake, which was what the angels answering him about to restore the temple. Okay. And then in Daniel 9:27, that covenant there. So the only context that's leading up to Daniel 9:27 is what Daniel's praying about. People will associate things in Daniel 8, by the way, with like the abomination stuff, but they also do that with Maccabees, which led to a lot of the preterist views that were like thinking Daniel 9:24 through 27 maybe about have association with Antiochus. I'm finding.
Well, this was also the historicist views. Now I have shown this on several shows where John Huss, Wycliffe, Martin Luther, everybody, right. The only people that were arguing for Daniel 8 to be in the future, and I have shown this, was Bellarmine, who was a Jesuit, and Ribera and all those folks. So it's mainly Bellarmine that they kept bringing up. He was the big one pushing it. But.
Yeah, right. He's the one that really made it grow. But I would say this: we can't say that like it was just a complete. Everything they're saying is necessarily wrong, right? So I'm not trying to say it's okay. I do think they were working hard and essentially to get the heat off of the Pope, right? But it wasn't necessarily like in total evil, like manipulation. They just literally probably, I don't know for sure. Well, but I would say
the thing
that could be wrong about everything.
Okay, but when you're reading it, it's clearly like it's talking about, and it's talking about like there's going to be they're talking about Greece. So they're talking about a physical earthly kingdom, Greece. So who's this little horn? Okay, so the little horn that's coming out of Greece. It's going to take and it's going to hold on, it's going to take and desecrate
from
this
the four
sanctuary,
directions, right?
So it's going to stop the daily sacrifice. And we know there's no daily sacrifice after Jesus. So this has to occur before Jesus. And we know it comes from an earthly kingdom too, because it says down at the bottom of Daniel 8, it's talking about the king of Greece, and the goat is the king of the Greece, and the great horn between his eyes is the first king. We know this is Alexander the Great. And it's even a great horn. So I mean, that's another
definitely talking about Greece.
Right.
It's definitely talking about Greece as Alexander. Yeah.
Now it's got, and then it says there's going to be 4 kingdoms that come out of it, 4 horns, because the Alexander's broke. So 4 horns stood up for it, are 4 kingdoms, which shall stand up and of that nation, but not in his strength. So,
why do you think it associates it with the 4 winds of heaven? What do you think is going on with that? Because I hear what you're saying. There's some interesting, weird, like
just directions. That's just what they used to use for the word direction, as 4 winds.
And then he I don't have much to say about it other than I understand why people say what they say. But
I made a few arguments. Definitely a person, a kingdom, like an earthly kingdom. When you're reading this is definitely an earthly kingdom, and it says that this little
it's certainly coming out of the kingdoms that's described in the
right, and it's coming out of the Greece. So we know it cannot be the little horn in Daniel 7, because this is definitely telling you that it's coming out of these 4, and these 4 are coming out of Greece. So then you got this other horn that's coming out of it, and I mean it's pretty clear that it's saying, those 4 kingdoms, which shall stand up of that nation, but not in his strength. His strength meaning the strength of that great horn, Alexander the Great. So that means it's not going to be any of his children, any of his people, family. And in the end, their kingdom, when the rebellious shall be consumed, a king of fierce countenance. So it's talking about another king that's going to come out of these 4, because it says their kingdom.
It certainly is. It's certainly in that motif. It's certainly in that historical context, right? It's definitely talking about Greece.
These 4 have to come out before Jesus gets sacrificed, because it's talking about a sacrificial system, and it's talking about something on earth. So when you're going back to Daniel 8, when you're going back to Daniel 8:14, now it's like, okay, 2,300 evening and mornings. This cannot possibly be 2,300 years, because it's talking about this little horn's going to do this for 2,300 years. And it's like, we don't know of any kingdom like that on earth. No kingdom like that.
Well, yeah, I
know this is definitely talking about an earthly kingdom. Just the language.
Yeah, but that's also where he starts bringing in. Okay, yeah, sure, okay. So here's what I want. I understand. I'll just leave it at that. Okay.
Okay.
I won't argue with you about it right now. Because I want to show you this. There's reason. I mean, I have a few arguments about why I think there's more going on in Daniel 8, but we can talk about it later.
The one thing I will say, if you want to say there's more going on in Daniel 8, I think it does paint a picture of like the Antichrist. Like it shows you like a little bit of like what the Pope is going to be like.
Yeah, like the spirit, because it has connections with Daniel 7. That's the thing. Yeah, it's definitely like all the things you said seem to be in that context. That's no doubt.
Because if you read everything that
Antiochus, it seems like that should have come. Don't you think it should have come before Daniel 7 then? If it's like a build up or something? There's definitely some weird structural thing going on, because Rome is the power that comes after. Why would it go back to Greece unless it's zooming in on the history?
Because this is why. Because in Daniel 7 it's talking about 4 kingdoms, right? Now it's kind of like in Genesis where it was, well, I won't say Genesis. There's parts of Revelation that do this, where it might talk about something and then like the next chapter, it kind of zeroes back in
out of nowhere,
part,
suddenly. Yeah. Or sometimes God does that and he just goes speaking sweepingly like over history, and then he zooms in on like a particular thing, a particular circumstance.
And Revelation 12 and 13 all relate to each other.
Right.
So
you believe the 6th seal, we're on the 6th seal and the 7th trumpet, right? Historically, something like that.
I think so, because the 6th seal, what it's supposed to be is the overthrow of Rome, basically.
I'm studying that still, because there are some good reasons in Revelation that suggest you can't take the chronology that's Standing for Truth is saying, but I just don't want to try to speak to it until I understand it better. So I just have to let it lie, if you read it chronologically, it's just, but there's reasons why he's receiving different aspects of history. He's not necessarily receiving the order of like a movie script, is the way I say it. But
yeah, so you know what I see is like Daniel 8, it's just zeroing in on,
that makes sense.
It's talking about 4 kingdoms, so there's still Greece. So now it's just going back and it's telling you what's going to happen to Greece, because this was kind of like an important thing, because the Jews were really rebellious. They were very rebellious. And that's part of like what happened to them was this whole thing with Antiochus. And it does paint a picture for what I think is basically what the Pope did with the Christians. The same way to oppress the Christians, Antiochus oppressed the Jews.
Yeah, it would be like a type in the Old Testament context and the Old Covenant context, right? But I think is what people automatically dismiss in thinking Adventists are simply just trying to like cover up the false 1844 thing. I don't think it's that simple. Like there is, like I have these books, and like when you look at Hebrews, like, and you look at what it's talking about in Hebrews and how the thing at the sanctuary in heaven is a real thing in the Bible, man. Like there's no doubt, like in the Old Testament, it talks about the heavenly temple. And
right.
God, like,
I mean, there's a heavenly sanctuary, but this is clear that in Daniel 8, it's not talking about a heavenly sanctuary. Because if you think about it, I mean, okay, like let's just go back to verse 11, or let's go back to verse 10.
I can put it on the screen. Hold on. Yeah.
Or if you go back to even 10, because 9's talking about a little horn which wax very great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the pleasant land.
Yeah, I know, I agree. It's definitely talking about
it's
the
coming
ram with 2
towards
horns.
Jerusalem. So
yeah, it's heading to the east towards Jerusalem. Yep.
Right. So this is not no heavenly Jerusalem. This is something that's happening on earth. So if the sanctuary is in heaven, so is this Jerusalem. And I just don't know of anything like that. Like you could say like, hey, there's a fight going on with Lucifer and God right now, and they're all fighting in heaven, but where's the proof at it? I mean, I could say all kinds of things.
Well, the language of Michael and Satan that's like interweaved in Daniel and Revelation is kind of interesting.
But I mean, I can't just right now say, look, God and Satan's having a fist fight up in heaven right now. Like I can't.
Well, it's not supposed to be literal. I mean, you can take that. I think when I hear criticisms of this, I think people are thinking about it kind of weirdly, like, because I hear this from other people too, and I've noticed this. It's like no one's saying Satan's up there in heaven, like in the temple, desecrating it. It's like a way of looking at like what as it is kind of. That's probably why people say it's like they think Adventists are like what do you call it, the Masons or whatever, because they talk about the as above if so below, but that comes from the Bible, by the way, like this idea, what you bind in heaven you bind on earth sort of thing. So Christ, we are Christ's body, and we have the Holy Spirit in us. That's like we're connected to Christ's ministry in heaven in a sense, like not literally per se, but it says we're seated in heavenly places, but we're not really in it. You know what I mean? So it's how you conceive of it can kind of skew what's being trying to be painted here. It's just saying like it doesn't give you like people like, did Satan fall before, or did he fall at Jesus ministry? Because it seems to be in Revelation 12 it's during his ministry that they fall from heaven, and people want to make that like take that overly literal. I think it's a misapplication. It's not concerned with time. It's just concerned with this overarching controversy, as Adventists call it, right? But there is obviously a great controversy between Christ and Satan.
But you still got to prove it out. Like we can't, like I'm not, you're not going to SFT me and all this stuff with this futurism. Because look, right here it says he extolled himself against the prince of the host. So this horn did this to the prince of the host, from whom the daily sacrifice was taken away. Now we say, okay, this happens from 457 to 18.
The sacrifice.
Okay, so what was the daily sacrifice that was going on? How can we confirm?
I talked about this earlier. Right. It's talking about the Day of Atonement, daily morning and evening sacrifices. It's in that picture.
Okay, so it wasn't going on before 457. So once 457 hit, that it stopped.
I know what you're saying. Because
how can I see this? How can I know that?
Okay, because it says okay, look, let's see. I have an answer here. I went to give an answer to this because there is a good answer for this, and I don't have my mind wrapped around it totally. But see, look, okay, verse. Essentially, it's something like this, and like I said, I don't have it down yet in my head, but it made sense to me when I heard him explaining it. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto the certain saints which spake, how long shall the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression? Let's see. So, and then he says, let's see. Sorry, I got to scroll down. So when you look at the word vision, there's actually two different visions going on here. There's the kazon, which is associated in this, because this is during the Persian, it doesn't start with Babylon in Daniel 8. It starts with Persia. And so it's like 2 years into the Persian thing. And so I wish I could I don't know how to do it, but I want to show you where the words are actually different, because it really opens up at least seeing some distinctions, which are very interesting. So he says, let's see, verse. I went too far.
But what I'm saying is, like, are you going to be able to show me that this is?
Yeah, because he speaks to the. It's more focused on the not so much. It's when the sanctuary gets cleansed. So,
but it's you also got to have a starting point from when the daily gets taken away.
Yes,
and what is this daily that's getting taken away? What is this daily that's going on? Because obviously we don't need this daily after 31 AD.
Right, you're saying it's not. It's not taken away in 457, obviously, but this gives you the starting point, because it's looking down past the cleansing. So, because look,
but it was taken away in 457. If you say it happened, wait, 2,300 years.
Okay, yeah, that's one of the
details that are going on.
Well, see, it's self-consistent. Here's the thing, that in this sense, if you understand Daniel 8 as being like not Antiochus, right? You see it as like describing the power that's already been established in Daniel 7, and then it's actually using this language of the Old Covenant sanctuary stuff and the Day of Atonement down. So the Daniel 7 is the Pope, right? It's Rome, and it's essentially obscuring the truth of salvation by faith and all that, and so he's affecting the covenant, and in that it's going to talk about that in the language of the Old Covenant, which are types of Christ, and the salvation and fully realized in the New Covenant. And so the cleansing of the sanctuary of the 23 at the end of the 2300 days would in that context of that that reading of it would be past when at the end of the 1260, when the Pope in 1798, if that's right as well, that's just the little horn is that power. Like, it's more of like the spiritual power, you could say, that comes out of Rome, but it's Satan in the background sort of thing. So in other words, you would see the ending of the cleansing of the sanctuary being associated with when the Rome loses its power in 1798. So you would, because the starting date, that's why I have to show you how the language of the two different visions, the Mare and the Kazon, it says the Mare, which is associated with the vision of the man, which we see like it being Jesus right over the river or whatever. And then it says the Mare is actually cut off from the Kazon. And then here earlier in the text, you see that the Kazon is associated with the 2300 days. That vision is the vision of the 2300. And that vision, it says right in going into Daniel 9, it says the Mare is cut off from the Kazon, and it establishes that the Kazon is the 2300 days, and the Mare is associated with the one about the mighty man / the one about the visage of a man, essentially, which we see later in Daniel 10. That's associated with the one who's Jesus over the river, that he sees over the river that no one else sees except for Daniel. And so that's part of the argument why you see, because like if you take the standard view or whatever, where do you even know? It doesn't even give you a starting date for the 2300 days. Like, how do you even know where that should start?
It says, how long shall this daily sacrifice be taken away? It says, and he answered unto me,
2300
until the evening and morning, 2300, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So it doesn't give you an exact starting date, but the starting date for this is as soon as this sacrifice is stopped. It's starting. This whole 2300 days is, 2300 evening and morning sacrifices are being started.
Sure.
And it's good to sacrifices is because evening and morning.
Yeah, it's associated with that.
You got to go back to the beginning. You got to go back to verse 13, and I see the word sacrifice. But yes, sacrifice doesn't even exist in here. But daily. But what's a daily? A daily is a sacrifice. It's not a daily day. It's not a daily day. It's a daily sacrifice.
I'm not arguing that it can't. I'm not arguing it's not associated with the atonement sacrifices that regarding the temple and the Day of Atonement. That's the thing. It is associated. Those are the things associated with Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. So it is certainly talking about the sacrifices, and there's good arguments to say they wouldn't. It's like no need to say sacrifice because the daily is associated with the evening and more, the sacrifice associated with the Day of Atonement.
Okay, but we have no. I mean, if you don't use Antiochus, we have no way of like showing where this daily sacrifice is occurring or anything. I mean, this is just where it's like it just sounds like futurism at this point, where you're just pulling things out of the air to try to to save a point, and it's like, why don't we just use? I mean, we know.
Okay, but what's this? But wait. What
there's nothing in this text that says this is happening in heaven. There's nothing in this text to tell you that.
Well, no, yeah, it's look,
nothing at all exists.
Nothing at all
exists in this text.
Why is it evening? Okay, well, I can offer some reasons why there's indication. It comes after Daniel 7, and it gives this little horn seeming to be more powerful than the 1 and 7, but that's not true about Antiochus.
Well, it doesn't say it's more powerful.
It says he was exceedingly great. In Daniel 7, the power is just great, but then he grows exceedingly great in Daniel 8. It's the same word, only it adds an adjective, exceedingly great, I believe is what it says. So that's one kind of weird way to describe it if it's Antiochus in the
I have to look at that language and see what
I'm developing the arguments. I'm going to put it together. I will. I can just point to a couple things. I've got a thing here I can share. I want to just ask you about Daniel 11, though.
But it was pretty great because, had Antiochus overcame
the way he
Jews, he would have wiped out
terrible.
Everybody. Like, he would have wiped out the whole entire world if he just would have, reduced the Jews to nothing. So, I mean, it was pretty great at that time.
Okay, but once you pull in the Maccabees to be describing this, the question arises, why didn't God have it included in the canon?
Because it's just history, I guess. I mean,
if it's going to I'm just saying, like,
I don't know how they decide canon, to be honest.
Right, but don't we want to say like whatever is
the Catholic Church tries to say Nehemiah's not canon.
Right. Wonder why. It's interesting to ask why. I mean, there's probably all sorts of reasons that no one may even understand why, but I would say God in his providence, we need to like respect the canon. And then, but also I would also say to certain people that you don't just get to dismiss all that other stuff. Obviously it has value and it can help, understand the Bible better. I'm not denying that. That's certainly true. The question is though, if that book actually gives us the proper understanding here, why was it excluded? It just raises the question, could that mean something? I'm not saying it does or doesn't. It certainly helps inform the Bible in certain ways. I'm not denying that either. I'm just saying, I don't know I'm not sure how to think about it. I just think,
even without Maccabees, you still have the Antiquities of the Jews and Josephus. He still confirms most of this. And
I have about 3 or 4 arguments, but I'm still developing them to how to like argue them well. But I would just point to, it's interesting. I find it, and this is the last thing I'll say about Daniel 8, and I'll give you the last word. But I want to show you something in Daniel 11 that I think is interesting because people are misunderstanding it. But I would just say this, in passing, I'll say this. I've told you the one about that no one would know until the time of the end, and that seems to necessitate to be about the end of time. But then the other one is, it's kind of interesting. There's a reason that it wouldn't say sacrifice. It's perfectly reasonable because it certainly is associated with the Day of Atonement and the morning and evening sacrifice. But did you know this is based in a very symbolic picture of the kingdoms, right? That are in Daniel 7 for one. 2, it is interesting that we have verses that suggest prophetic literature has a principle of a day for a year, and that why are the 2300 evening and mornings, which are associated with the daily sacrifice for the Day of Atonement and the cleansing of the sanctuary, by the way, but in this one place right here, in this prophetic literature full of symbolism, it renders it morning. It doesn't render them morning and evening. Every single reference talking about in literal narrative about these sacrifices associated with the Day of Atonement, it calls it the morning evening, except for here it says evening morning, but it is clearly associated with the same thing. But it gives it and this is why the King James rendered it days, because they recognized it. For some reason it's saying evening morning, just like in Genesis. That's why they rendered it days, which is kind of peculiar because everywhere else it's the morning evening sacrifice, not the evening, but they do it evening morning, which suggests day is a reasonable translation
Well, okay, here's one thing. If Antiochus actually entered the temple on in the year, or any troops entered the temple in the year 171, it would be 6 years and 3 months. Right? Because I mean, it's because some people think he's got to set up the idol. Now that part I haven't read it in a while, so I don't know. When the troops actually enter the temple, but they were to enter the temple, because this is my argument against SFT, because he's going to try to use like Matthew and all this and say, well, this, the abomination and desolation can't happen. And it's like, no, because it already, Antiochus did the same thing. And why was it considered an abomination when Antiochus went? Because you had a Gentile going into a Jewish temple, and as soon as that happens, they have to cleanse it. So
I know what you mean.
The sacrifices until it's cleansed.
He's all over the place. He's like, the 7-year destruction of the temple was the 7 years. And it's like, dude, it can't be that. And then also the future. Come on. Like, it's not that willy-nilly with the time periods. You're being sloppy with it. You're like saying, well, Titus is kind of the thing, like where he desecrates the temple, which is kind of like Antiochus. And it's 7 years, man. He was arguing that to me, like, it's 7 years. And I'm just going like, dude, yeah, okay. It was 7 years. So what? Like, so are you saying well, no, that's a type of it. Well, I thought Antiochus was a type of it. And like, why would it be against a Jewish temple? Like, why would the future thing, when the fulfillment is really Christ, right? Why would the temple come? When you're a futurist, you're being a dispensationalist. If you think all that future stuff is going to be a temple, the old covenant's gone. The Antichrist wouldn't be concerned with disrupting God's temple. That would be an abomination. Like you were saying in that video, I did a clip of you when you were talking about it, because it's true. It's like, even if you entertain a future, I believe there is a future Antichrist, don't you? Don't you think the Pope's going to get power back and then Christ is going to destroy him when he returns, like 2 Thessalonians 2 says? I mean, I don't know how. I was curious. That was one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I think you're more preterist than I am, and so you think I'm futurist.
Well, no, I'm historicist now. I mean, this is historicist. This isn't like
right. But do you think 2 Thessalonians 2 is fulfilled in the 70 AD? Like where it says that Christ will destroy the Antichrist with the brightnesses of his coming, and that's associated with the resurrection from the dead?
Oh, no, not 2.
That's future, right?
I have to read it, man. I haven't read it.
See, that's the thing, because a lot of I've been talking to David Wilcoxon and emailing him. And so he's the much more preterist.
Yeah, watch David Wilcoxon. Let me just real quick. David Wilcoxon, I don't think he's like I thought he was a Sabbath keeper, right? But he's like, I think he's a lunar Sabbatarian. So I'll just throw that out at you and watch. Yeah,
I sent him my argument. I'm like, dude, see, the problem is, if you're more preterist, then you're going to end up taking some of those time periods and trying to make them literal. And my recent argument, nobody understands it. I tried to get Praise to do a review, and I don't think he fully understood what I was saying. I'm saying that because Daniel renders these periods in lunar calendar reckoning, and he wasn't using a lunar calendar in history. Like the Jews didn't keep a lunar calendar because Passover has to be in spring. So is what that means. Just like he would have known the 70 weeks were years, right? Because you can't build a temple in 70 weeks and restore Jerusalem. So he knew that it was not literal 70 weeks, right? He would have known that. He would have known that the 3.5, this times in half. I guess he wouldn't have known the 3.5 years, because it wouldn't have been rendered that way in Daniel. But the 1260 days, like, look, here's the question. This is kind of the way I'm trying to get people to understand what I'm arguing. It's like, if you say the 3.5 years is literal, because it's literally 1260 literal days, the problem is, on their literal calendar, you can't get a 3.5 years with 1260 days. It's rendered in purely lunar calendar time. And so the 70 weeks were not literal lunar weeks of years. The 70 weeks were the years. You're just supposed to count the years, not convert it to 360, because so it's like, how many Passovers did they have during the first 69 weeks? The 483 years, 483, right? Well, in order to have that work out, then there has to be one per year. And if you make it 360 days a year, does that mean you had more days of atonement because you were 5 days short, and every 72 years, you'd get an extra full year of days added to it? You would never stay on spring. They couldn't ever have had literal time that was 360 days per year. You get what I'm saying? Like, they have to add a month, and then some days have 29 days and some months have 30. And they add a 13th month every third year. You know what else that means? That means, and I laid it all out. You can't get, no matter where you start your years or your 3.5 years on their calendar, even in the most ideal spot, you can never get a stretch of 3.5 years without getting 43 months at least. You either get 43 or 44 months in a 3.5 year period, no matter where you start it in all of Jewish history. There's no time or place, at least any time around Daniel's time till Jesus' time until now. So it can't be literal time, because you never get 42 literal months in 3.5 years, and you can't get 1,260 days in 3.5 years either, because when you add the 13th month, you end up with 384 days per year. And when you have 12 months, it's 354. Now, because they adjust some months to make the Sabbaths and the festivals, certain festivals not line up in the 8th and 9th months, they will adjust by a day after they sight the moon. And so it's either when 12 months, it's 354. When there's 13 months, the year has 384 plus or minus 1 day, according to adjustments. And no matter how you render plus or minus 1 with 354 or n plus or minus 1 with 384, no matter how you render the plus or minus, you can't get 1,260 in 3.5 years. It's impossible. And so to me, that's an indication that it's not literal time. But that's another argument. But no one seems to get what I'm saying. Daniel knew that it was rendered in lunar time. And he also knew that they didn't use in literal history a lunar calendar. So I say, like Daniel's 70 weeks, that's an argument for the day for a year principle. Okay. It wouldn't have to be associated with the 2300 though, because that's not an increment of like addition of years. It's just a amount of days. But so let me show you Daniel 11 real fast, because I want to see what you think of this. It's so here's the thing. They go, Daniel 9:27 has to be about the Antichrist, because look, they do it in Daniel 8 too, but which is a mistake, right? Because it's before, and they're saying that this is after. But
yeah, so my argument would be Daniel 8's about Antiochus, and then this is just filling in the details.
Right. So this is also about that. See, that's a problem too, though, because notice if you don't make the distinction where Daniel 11 ends and you just keep reading, there's no chapter 12 is like a break necessarily, right? It goes right into, look at the first thing it says at the end of this thing. And Michael will stand up, the great prince, stand as for the children of thy people, and there'll be a time of trouble such as was never seen. This is associated with Christ's return.
Hold on, where are you at now on this?
That's the end of Daniel 11 into Daniel 12. Remember, there's no original break there.
Where do you see Michael at in this? In verse, what verse?
Verse 1, 12 verse 1, you see there? And then right in the middle. Right there.
Oh, you mean on Daniel 12.
It's the time of trouble, the time of Jacob's trouble. And Jesus associates that with his second coming. And then he talks about the resurrection. This is where the resurrection passage from the Old Testament comes from. It's one of only a few resurrection passages. There's one in Isaiah, and then Ezekiel's clearly actually talking more about restoration of the covenant people. But this is obviously where Revelation 20 is quoting from. And
okay, so yeah, there'd probably be a lot of future in this one.
Yeah, so this is why Adventists have some things that are kind of future, because Matthew 24 does have connotations of Christ's second coming and the destruction in 70 AD, which I'm glad to hear Standing for Truth admitting that a little more. He used to say like partial preterists were false too, but it's like, dude, it had to make sense to the disciples. So, and it clearly they left and fled to Petra when the Roman army surrounded Jerusalem, and they escaped. And Jesus was predicting the fall of the temple. Every scholar acknowledges that. But they also ask him about the end of the age and at the sign of your coming. I say that's associated with his second coming at the resurrection from the dead, when the dead shall rise first, and we who are alive and remain will be gathered together with them to meet the Lord in the air. Like when you associate 1 Corinthians 15, 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 Thessalonians 4, those three, and what Jesus says in John 14, he's clearly saying there's a second coming at the end of history. And so this is right out of Daniel 11. So it's not crazy to say there's some sort of future application. I would say it's when the deadly head wound is healed after the 1200, sometime after the Pope got taken off his seat, right? They want to make that literally 3.5 days or whatever, because it's called 3.5 days, but it's just associated with the 1260, because a day for a year. It's called 3.5 years in Revelation. It's also called 3.5 days. It's also called 1260 days. That seems to me to suggest a day for a year as well, because it's calling those periods of church history 3.5 days, 3.5 years, 1,260 days, which would be the amount of days on a lunar calendar in 3.5 years. But it also calls it 3.5 days. And the futurists say
that's literally 3.5 days as well. I'm saying no, the 3.5 days is the 1260, is the 42 months, is the times and half a time. It's the big period that everybody thinks doesn't exist in prophecy. That we say is the 1260 in Rome, dealing with Daniel 7. And then that connects from Daniel 7 to Daniel 13, and leading up to Revelation 13 is, Christ's birth and more sweeping pictures of history. Then we see like the mark of the beast in 13 and 14 from there. And then before that in chapter 11, before chapter 12, which is like the centerpiece, and Christ's birth, and kind of more sweeping. And it deals with the 1260, right? The woman flees to the wilderness for 1260 days. Those are years. They have to be. It has to be associated with that, because that's when this power from Daniel 7 has its power. So if you believe the 1260 is years, and then you look at Revelation 12 and 11, chapter 11 has like several little microcosms, like the two witnesses and all that, and that's associated with the 1260. And then another little microcosm of that, it's called the 42 months, and it gives you these different like aspects of that period in different renderings of the time. But they think, oh, because it's 3.5 days, the two witnesses literally die in the streets like of Jerusalem. It's like, no, dude, this is way more symbolic than that. That's like the witness of Scripture being trampled by the 1200, the power of Rome trampling, because it's the 3.5 years is the 1260, and that's when Rome is in power, with the civil power over history. And so that's all associated with that being trampled. And see, that all informs. That's why, there's so much to go over. I'll just leave it at that. But I would say that about Daniel 11, because if you take away that and you just keep reading in your Bible, you like have to turn the page, you like come to a stop. But if you just keep reading this, the ending of this ends with Michael standing up, and we see that Babylon's destroyed before Jesus returns. And this is like the final little picture of that, what's leading up. And so a lot of this stuff should, in congruency with the historicist interpretation, just way of thinking, these things don't have to be really, they are zoomed in. I do agree with that on some level, but even in their zooming in, it could be speaking of a more bigger picture in the sense that it's like a final episode, right? But it's really just the conclusion. It's kind of like Armageddon. It's like the conclusion of this. And that's the great controversy, is like, should be like the grounding theme. That is the contention between, Adventists have a whole theology on it, which I think makes a lot of sense. And you don't have to be an Adventist to see that theology in the Bible. I think it's clearly there, and other scholars see it and they're not Adventists. But so here's the thing. Daniel 12, so they go first to 11:22 because it's the most ambiguous mention of the covenant. I'm going to argue, because I think Daniel 8 has application to a broader picture, and that there's very close ties. If you think Daniel 8's Antiochus, you have to say 11 is associated with Antiochus as well.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Oh, this is all the details. That's what.
But see, the problem is what I just said. Think about what I'm saying though, like about Daniel, how into Daniel 12, it goes right into that, and that's not an original break. And so the question is, like, why is it associating it with the events of before Christ returns? So there's something going on there. That's all I'm saying. I see how it's tied to Antiochus. I see why people think that. I'm just saying, I think in that
if you read
sense,
the Josephus, like almost all this, it looks like it's like tied to that.
Right.
All the way up.
By the way, there's Advent. This isn't all like you have to believe this to be an Adventist. There's different theories about certain parts of this. Some people want to try to, I don't think it can work, but they want to make the 1260 literal and historical. And there's reasons why that can't work. But okay. And with the arms of a flood, so it's talking about the king of the north. So it's talking about this figure, whether you want to call him an antichrist or not. He's the guy opposing God's people, right, from Daniel 8. So I'm just going to call him the Antichrist. I know you may not accept that, but just the one opposing God, right? We'll say something like more, not as refined.
Are you talking about the little horn in Daniel 8?
Yeah, the one talking about the king of the north, right? He's not a good guy, is what I'm trying to say, I guess, right? He's doing
okay. Where are we at now? Oh, chapter 11.
Okay, yeah, 21 here. Yeah. In his estate, it's talking about the vile person, to whom they shall not give honor of the kingdom, but shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flattery. So they're going to be deceptive, this evil power. With the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him. Before him who? The vile person, this individual. And whether it's Antiochus, it's the one opposing God's people, to just be more general, to just agreeable or whatever. He shall come in peaceably. So he's going to be deceptive. And then it says, and with the arms of a flood shall they overflown before him. He's saying he's going to like take over people, right? Him is this bad guy. And so it's saying people who are before him will be whatever, overflown. He'll be deceiving them, doing things to the people who he's taking over or whatever. So him is the bad guy. They is the people the bad guy is attacking right here, if you're following me. So the him is the vile person, the bad guy. The ones that are overflown, the they that are overflown by him, the bad guy, are the people, and it's so the people are the subject, or the sub-subject, you could say, and shall be broken. So what broken? The people that are being overflown by him will be broken, right? I mean, this is just kind of basic stuff. I'm just pointing this out. Yea, also the prince of the covenant. Whatever this is, it's not the Antichrist and his covenant with the Jews, for goodness sake. Sorry, here. You get what I'm saying? In other words, this is the covenant of the prince of the covenant is Jesus, probably. Now, it could be ambiguous if you're not sure about Daniel 9:27, right? Because if you try to follow me here, I'm going to tie it together here. The tidings of these things came into the... Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Sorry. I skipped out somehow. I don't know how I did that. Damn it. Try to follow me here, because I think you cannot make this covenant, even if you think Daniel 9:27 is the Antichrist in some covenant with the Antichrist. You can't back it up with this, because this Antichrist figure is opposing the prince of the covenant is Jesus' covenant, or God's covenant with his people. Because what's being trampled, let's see, what's being trampled are the people, yea, even the prince of the covenant. What's being trampled here? What covenant? It's not the covenant the
covenant by Ptolemaeus Philopator's son.
But it's not the covenant of the bad guy is the point, right? Because it's the bad guy that's doing stuff, and he's trampling these people who he's overflying. And then yea, the prince of the covenant as well. That's included with the they that are being overflown, is my argument. But it's still not totally clear, right? We're not sure. But now watch. It's not, but I'm just saying it's not the covenant that the Antiochus made, right? If it's Antiochus, that is. Wouldn't you say? By the grammar here? It's pointing to something that's opposed to the Antichrist. Right, but it's not
Ptolemaeus Philopator's son.
It's not the bad guy's covenant, though, that's being in view there, right? The prince of the covenant is not the Antichrist covenant. The bad guy in the text.
This is that king that made a covenant with the Jews.
Right. It's somebody else who this bad figure is trampling on. So that is not so if you believe this is has connotation to a future Antichrist, it's not his covenant. If you think Daniel 9:27 here in 22, it's somebody else's covenant that he's overbearing onto. In other words, is the point I'm trying to make, right?
Right.
So, but you could miss that if you weren't really studying it. What's being broken is the prince of the covenant. Yea, also the prince of the covenant. Also what? Also attached to the shall be broken. Broken by what? Him who? The bad guy who's coming over the people as a flood. They are the people being overflown by him, the bad guy. The things that are being broken are the they that are being broken by the bad guy, him. And the things being broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant, is another thing being broken by the him bad guy associated with the they, the people that he's breaking, is the point. Now here, if that's clear, the next use of covenant, let's see, I don't have it highlighted, but the next three times it mentions the covenant in here, I don't know exactly there's one right here. It's called the Holy Covenant, and he's indignation against this him figure, the king of the north, is against the Holy Covenant. What Holy Covenant? Not the covenant with that the Antichrist has made with the people in deception. No, he's against it. The next two, and then it's mentioned two more times, and it mentions this. We know that he's against the Holy Covenant, so it's not his covenant. And then we see the next two mentions, same kind of thing. It's called the Holy Covenant. So it's this covenant here, which we know that I'm not skipping it because it's questionable. Notice the daily sacrifice too, by the way, is associated here. And the sacrifice isn't there, it's the daily, so it has connotations to Daniel 8, certainly. Okay, and then so the first mention of covenant, he's against it, the Antichrist. It's not his covenant. And then that makes it more clear when it says he's against the Holy Covenant, which I say is the same covenant. It actually clarifies this covenant in view, the 5 times it's mentioned, is the same covenant, and it's that this figure that's the bad guy is against it the whole time. the last time it mentions, the 5th time I noticed, it doesn't say holy. So it's the same covenant, and the 3 times in the middle, he's certainly against it. It's called holy.
Okay.
And so this doesn't help them. It actually is an evidence against it because it doesn't support their covenant. Whoever the SPAD figure is, he is opposing this covenant, whatever that covenant is. It's not the one he makes. That's the point.
The thing I hate about this, though, is I just wonder why they didn't say holy covenant in Daniel 9.
I know, but it's ambiguous. But he even didn't do it in every case here. But they're all the same. It's clearly talking about.
Okay, yeah, all right.
At least you can at least say it. So to be fair, I'll just say it's not the covenant that he's made. It's a covenant he's opposing in some sense, or that he's coming against. And yeah, at first I was like, well, why does the first one? Does that mean it's not the same covenant because one is called holy 3 times and then twice it's not called holy? And no, because it's certainly the thing whatever it is, it's always in opposition to this figure. And so I don't know why they didn't do it, but I don't think you can then say it's not that there's separate covenants. It's just describing it a particular way. We don't know why, but you can't say that necessitates that they're different because that happens all the time with stuff. It's just referring to it, and it's the way people write. There may be some deeper reason, but the point is the Antichrist every time. So people point to that and they'll say, see, and there's one in Daniel 12 too, but I'll leave it there. But my point is just, they're not even really studying it. They're just, oh, there's this other reference. And it's like, okay, say that I guess God never focused on the covenant Jesus makes with his people, the crowning achievement of God's purpose in the world to bring salvation back and call the world back to him through Christ. And the only covenant in prophecy that looks down to the end of time when Christ returns, it's always talking about this covenant of an Antichrist. But God doesn't anywhere associate it with Jesus and the new covenant he brings when he brings everlasting righteousness and salvation and eternal life to the world, which was God's plan from the beginning. Right. Okay, sure. I don't think so. Sorry. And when you put Jesus outside of the 70th week, you make him fail the prophecy. End of story. I don't see why this doesn't have more weight on people. He can't. 70 weeks are determined. It gives you a starting point. The fact that you haven't even thought you need to find a starting point tells me all I need to know. Everybody understood. If you have gaps between the periods of the 7, 62, and 1, and you put Jesus' death in the gap, you're putting him outside the 70 weeks. 70 weeks were appointed. They were set aside. They were a time given to do something. But make atonement for iniquity. If you put him in the gap, you're putting him outside the prophecy, which is the time frame given. If you say it doesn't matter somehow, why the heck did it even give you a time frame? And not only did it give you a time frame that you're putting him outside of, but yet you want to affirm that his death ratifies the covenant and brings those things to fruition. Why would he give a time period just to put him outside of it? And then he also gives you a time period telling you when he would come. Now you're ignoring that too. That renders first of all, it renders having it be a time period at all worthless. But not only that, it doesn't just give a time period that you're putting him outside of, but it gives you a starting point and tells you that you need to know and understand it. And then from that period that you need to know and understand is until Messiah the Prince is 69 of the 70. So not only do you put him outside of it, you've rendered the time period in itself being useless, and which is impossible because as it is, have you not read it is written. And it also not only just gives you a time period that you're not making important and you're actually making him fail. Why the heck do they tell you to know and understand a time frame to when to start the timer to when it literally says till Messiah? Why would it tell you that if there's gaps of unknown period in there? Just so you can put a 70th week twice, one at Titus and one in the future that the New Testament doesn't mention once, doesn't mention a 7-year period. You'd think if you lived in the 1st century, right, and the 70th week didn't come after the 69th, and you're putting in the New Testament that Jesus brought the new covenant. This is the new covenant of my blood. They quote Jeremiah 31 and saying the old covenant's passing away. Jesus, this is the covenant of my blood, right? It's like the Messiah was going to bring the new covenant, not like the one I made with them and when I took them by the hand out of Egypt, but I'm going to put my law in their hearts. Did Jesus do that or not? I say he did. If you say he didn't, I say you don't have a Messiah. And so how could the New Testament writers say those things, write Jesus' words, this is the blood of my new covenant, and then not think, although he came, they recognized when he would come at the end of the 69th week, He makes the sacrifices cease, right? He is the wave sheaf offering in the language of Paul. Okay, it's like, how could they not think it was Jesus bringing the new covenant? That he's not the one, the he who is the prince who is to come, the one who they're asking if he's going to bring the kingdom to fruition now. And he says, it's not time for you to know. They think he's the messianic figure. They think he brought the new covenant. They think he put an end to animal sacrifices. And he died in the middle of the week that comes after the 69th week, which is the week that was the way they were in expectation of him coming. How could they not think it was Jesus bringing the new covenant? How could they, if they didn't, okay, say they didn't somehow, and they knew all this, newfangled way of thinking, it's really all of a sudden going to be talking about the Antichrist suddenly, who's going to put an end to sacrifices that Jesus already put an end to, like you were saying. Now, let's say that somehow they do think that's not talking about Jesus, even though it's the one verse that confirms him fully, even though he did put an end to sacrifice. Let's say they somehow didn't think that, even though they said that in the New Testament over and over and over and over again. And Isaiah 53 is associated with the things he accomplished from 924. And that's tied to Jeremiah 31 and Isaiah 42, etc. Okay. Somehow they didn't. Okay. Now, if they didn't think that, why the heck would they not mention it in the New Testament? By the way, there's a 7-year period where that 70th week is going to be fulfilled, that God put on hold, but didn't mention that he was going to put it on hold. How could they not think it was Jesus? The 70th week is future, and then not mention that if that were somehow a miracle that is true, which is impossible. But if it were true, and then they wouldn't mention it in the New Testament, give me a break, bro.
Well, my biggest thing about this is it's pretty rock solid that if you read Ezra 7 through 9, there's so much language that matches this whole prophecy in Daniel 9:24 to 9:23 to 9:27, and I just don't even see how you can show that. Well, I should just say 24 to 27, because it's like, I don't know, like, what other commandment comes forth to bring again the people and to build Jerusalem. It's like, I just don't even see any other, anything else that could possibly even fit in there in any shape at all. Because it's like, when you look at some of the other decrees, it had nothing to do with the people. Yeah. It had just to do with the temple. And this just says it's going to be to bring the people and to build Jerusalem. There's nothing about the temple. So it's like that one there was someone that came before Artaxerxes, and I think that was just about the temple.
Oh yeah, I read about that today. The scholar I was reading, William Shea, he's considered a really good scholar, right? And he's done a lot of work with the cuneiform stuff and all the other archaeological evidence regarding, like, understanding the timeline, because there's issues with, like, if it gave the preterists say, like, the Bible actually got there's actually something wrong. So, like, full preterists have to, like, literally say the Bible, like, got some stuff wrong, and they have to, like, switch stuff around. They say Persia. So their rendering of the 4 kingdoms is actually, they render it as, for the most part, they render it Babylon, then the Medes, then the Persians are the third one. And so they actually render Daniel 7 and 8 to both be about Antiochus, because they don't make Rome the 4th country in Daniel 7. They make it Greece, because they separate the Medes and the Persians as 2 separate kingdoms, because the Medes were kind of in charge at first, and then the Persians were much bigger and took over. But the Bible seems, most interpreters have always said the Medes and the Persians were this kind of like the one, because the ram has 2 horns, and one of them's smaller or whatever. And so, but they have to actually fiddle with the text and say the text is wrong. So they have to be kind of like more like liberal with the text. And so to me, and I read about that earlier. And so they actually, by doing that, because of the similarities in Daniel, see that it's like motivated by there's just like, you're going to go down certain roads. That's what I was saying about, like, the 2300 days. It's not simply just throwing, like, a BS thing at the wall, dude. It's more than that. There's more going on. It's not out of nowhere. Like, but beside all that, it doesn't matter. You can think whatever you want about it. But if you actually read, like, there's a lot of, I've got like 5, I have this 7 books. This is everything. They called all the scholars together. People say, like, they just fired Ford, didn't take him seriously. No, they did, like, a conference where they, like, all the scholars came together and, like, considered what he said. And then they wrote like 7 500-page books on interpretive method. All the best scholars doing studies on Revelation, Daniel, Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, the heavenly sanctuary, the whole 9 yards. And they wrote these books. So I'm like, they're like seriously heavy reading, but they took him seriously. And at the end they said, no, we're going to hold fast to what we believe. And so they can't let him keep teaching pastors if he doesn't believe it, what the church holds to. So anyways, just these books are like crazy. Like, it's not just crap. I think the Antiochus thing is weighty, but I do see there's something else.
I don't know how much more descriptive a prophecy can get, man. What more does
that's what people say, but a lot of people contend with it.
That's what the truth is. If you really read history and really know history, honestly, try to read history for once. It's like, how do you not think this? You cannot say this is happening in heaven. Now it's happening on earth. Now it's happening over here. Now it's happening over here. No. Grab a hold of yourself, man. It's just like, it's real simple. When you're going into Daniel 11, dude, seriously, it's talking about the first year of Darius the Medes, and then it starts to talk about the 3 kings of Persia, and then the 4th shall be far richer. Well, guess what? You got 4 characters in Daniel.
Okay, so you think Daniel 12 is talking about the first century then, I guess. The resurrection happened in 70 AD, and it's a spiritual resurrection.
Now Daniel 12, this is, I got to admit, man,
I'm saying there's something, you got to look at that, because there's more going on than just what happened historically
is, completely, because, even atheists
Daniel 11 is the same
it must have been written later. That must have been written after 100 AD.
Sure, but it's zooming in on it. It's talking about the figure in Daniel 8. There's no getting around it. There's associations with Daniel 11, with Daniel 8, the most heavily between 8 and 11. And 8 and 7 are connected as well. Why is that? There's a power that's stringing this together. That's the principalities and powers. It is the conflict between Christ and Satan behind the scenes. We do not struggle against flesh and blood, but of principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. There's a bigger story going on. That's what it is. I'm giving ear to the point about Antiochus as best I can, man. But there is something more going on behind there.
Well, this is what's going on. It's just painting a picture. It's a fulfilled prophecy that also paints a picture of something else. But it is a fulfilled prophecy. Like Daniel 11 completely details Daniel 8. There's just no getting around it.
But you got to look at how that's associated in Revelation at the end, also associated with the end of the time in the second coming in the later chapters of of Revelation. It brings up the King of the North again, which is obviously from Daniel 11. And that's in the flow of the explanation leading up to the end of time. It's a recapitulation in Revelation, don't get me wrong. There's
hold on, Revelation. What chapters of Revelation
I think like in 17 through 19, maybe. I think some in the later chapters after the 1260 and stuff, after the historic periods are mentioned, after Jesus is mentioned in 12, and then with the historicist picture, of the 1260, and then it goes on, and there's little microcosms of like the second coming throughout the book. I think it's like there's 3 main sections of it, but there's many different structures going on. And by the way, Chris, Revelation is about eschatology. It is about from the church age. It talks about the 7 churches.
Yeah, I know that.
And then it goes on till the second coming, right? Well, get this. Did you know that language in the book of Hebrews, which is talking about the heavenly temple, which is the true temple made without hands that Christ is ministering in, that's mentioned in the Old Testament here and there. And then most people don't recognize this because they don't give ear to the heavenly sanctuary concept, which is clearly all the things in the earthly temple were based off the one in heaven. Christ is the worthy sacrifice. He ascends into heaven. And now he's ministering there. The one on earth, it says in Hebrews over and over in great detail that was all a picture and a type. And Paul teaches that he nailed it to the cross because really the full picture was Christ ministering from heaven, where he's going to take his bride when he delivers the kingdom to his Father. In the end, he's getting a people for himself, and that the true temple was always in heaven. And so when it talks about, but in the whole book of Revelation, most people don't recognize this. His way is in the sanctuary. It says that in Hebrews. It's a quote from the Old Testament because it's a way of providing provision for his people, which were all shadows of Christ's ministry. People don't take this seriously. They're just like, oh, it is finished. And they're right. He paid the price. It's finished. But he's ministering. We still sin. He's still calling people to himself. And that was all a shadow of what he's doing now. And nobody has developed that theology. Adventists have. And it's in the Bible very heavily. And the book, here's my point, and I'll end it here, and I'll give you the last word. because I'm losing my voice. But the picture that, if you understand the sanctuary and its meaning, like in how Christ is ministering it now, in like the prayers or the smoke going up, and like our repentance and our prayers and Christ's ministry, giving the Spirit to us from heaven, sort of idea. He is the whole layout through through you as you read through Revelation is he's ministering amongst the lampstands, and that's the church, him, Christ being in the churches, the very beginning. And he's going through the compartments of the sanctuary. It's actually a picture of a walk through of the sanctuary. And the whole book of Revelation, from Christ's first coming until the end of the eschaton, is all laid out in the book of Revelation with recapitulations, but in a structure that is Christ going into the most holy place, like what he did, what they did on Yom Kippur, which is what his sacrifice represented. And then he goes into the heavenly, into the most holy place. And it's like, look, the whole book of Revelation is from the first ministry to the end of time. And it's in the structure of the high priest entering into the most holy place, mingling amongst the furniture of the holy place up into the throne, which is where God's throne is in the holy place, where the Ark of the Covenant was. Like, there's some serious stuff going on here that's not just made up. This is like his ways in the sanctuary, bro. That's all I'll say. Go ahead. Last word. You can have it, buddy.
About the only thing I probably would have issue with would be some of the language in Daniel 12 when it's talking about, like, just from my argument standpoint, verse 11, and from that time the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination shall be set up. There shall be 1,290 days, and blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,335th day. Because on that note,
throws a wrench in it. It's kind of weird, huh?
Yeah, because my whole thing with this is, it sounds like when the daily sacrifice is taken away, which I would say is by Christ's death on the cross, and the abomination desolation set up, there shall be 1,290 days. And the only way I can probably reconcile that, because it doesn't say,
it makes it seem like it's associated with Christ, right? And that's what an argument.
Well, it makes it sound like as soon as he's crucified,
right,
there's going to be an abomination of desolation set up, and maybe in between the two, someone might read that, but I guess the way I would read it is just like the daily sacrifice is taken away. And then when the abomination of desolation set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Like,
think about that, Chris.
After, and it seems like Jerusalem was destroyed in that amount of time.
And by the way, Chris, just to say, I'm not sure how to think of that yet. That's why I don't bring it up, because it does seem weird. And there is weird ways that, like, everybody's picture has, like, when you look at all those things associated with that period, like, that the futurists could kind of use that, but the problem is, like, so these I think is what people are doing is because the Hebrew is not that specific, because they have like a lesser, and so these abomination, there's not a lot of words that can be used, and so it's just when something is happening to the I don't think it is Christ, and see, because it's associated with the 1260, and there's just too much. We know that there's too much historically connected to the Daniel 7 with that, right? So, but you know what, that actually, we should talk about that next time. Let's just say that. I was going to give you the last word, but I needed to say that, because to me, that actually lends to what you were asking me earlier about the starting point issue with the 2300, right? Because, like, it doesn't start right on that. And it's a similar kind of thing here. If you believe the 1260 is talking about, the Antichrist power, and it certainly is. I won't go into it, but I think
it is too, the 12:6.
So that would be the same kind of thing, right? It's not being that specific in that sense. It's just saying, because that's when the new covenant, you could say that's when the new covenant starts, and it's under that covenant that the power in chapter 7 is actually that's the thing he's focused on messing with. And the church goes astray kind of early, right? And it becomes the harlot. And so it's really just trying to connect you to that. In that sense, maybe it doesn't have to be so particular like we tend to want it to be, in the sense of it's just referring to that period, which is the 1260, which is when that power arises. And it's what's really critical is that power, like the starting points in some cases are important, or the ending points. And that's what I would just say about the 2300. It's really looking down to when that'll be finished. And it seems to me, if the 1260, like you're saying in Revelation or Daniel 12, that how it's associated there in the same way, The 2300 is really concerned about, because he tells Daniel, that's not for you to, you don't, that's from way after you die. No one will understand it till the time of the end. And I think it says, when he's asking about its interpretation, he doesn't get it right away. And then you go into chapter 9 and it's like 2 years later. And then he's praying about repentance. And then that's when the angel actually mentions the kazon and the mare again. And he associates the differences between the two. And it mentions both in Daniel 8, but he doesn't get the answer. And then it's 2 years later or whatever amount of time has passed. And he's at, wherever he is in the narrative. And see, he brings up the kazon and the mare, and he tells him, the mare is cut off from the kazon, and the kazon in 8 is clearly the vision that starts in the Persian period, because it starts the chapter in Persia. He's in Persia. It's not Babylon this time, even though it's using the same symbolism from Daniel 7 with the statue. He's starting it from without Babylon in the picture, and so that gives you an indication that it's associated with that time period, and that's when 457. That's when the decree is, and then it tells you the mare is cut off from the kazon, which tells you that they have the same starting point, but the mare is the 409. It actually associates that with the 70 weeks and tells you that it's kata, and it's only used this is interesting. It's only that word for cut off, the vision, it's cut off or whatever. That word, I think it's the determined word, right? In Daniel 9:24 or 23 or whatever. But that word is only used once in the whole Bible, kata. So you can't reference it anywhere else. You have to go to the Mishnah from that period. And it's mentioned 9 times in the Mishnah from that period. And 8 of the 9 times, it's literally translated cut off. Or it could be determined. So it's like got a slight nuance. But 8 of the 9 times in that period that it's used in the Mishnah, it just means cut off, like when you sever something from something else. And so there's a really good case to be made that it's literally saying, there's really no other way to actually read that word anyways. But it would be better translated like, 70 weeks are cut off of the kazon. So the mare is cut off from the kazon 70 weeks. It's saying the 70 weeks. And then you look and you see that the kazon and the mare, that's just translated vision, and it makes it ambiguous in the English. But when you see when and where and how the 2 different words are used, you realize, and he doesn't know the interpretation. And then Gabriel comes and you see that they're connected, because he brings up the kazon and the mare and he separates what's what. And he calls the mare of the evenings and mornings. He says it that way too. The mare of and then he uses evenings and mornings, which also associates it back with the 2300, where it mentions, I think, mare only twice in Daniel 8. Vision is there like 10 times. 3 of them are mare, 7 of them are kazon. And he associates it in Daniel 9. And he says the mare is cut off from the kazon. And so this is really powerful that you'll never see unless you look at the original language, which is unfortunate. I don't like the fact that that's the case, but when you see the difference, I go to this channel. It's called Angels in the Glen, and he talks about the 1260, the 1290, and the 1335, and it's amazing. I couldn't even tell you it, but you
maybe I can get him on my show, because that's a Seventh-day Adventist, right?
Yeah, I think
I'll see if he'll come on my show, man, and talk to me, because I want a clear understanding of.
He makes an amazing case,
because I just don't get where this whole daily stops at, and what. Because I mean,
I can send you some articles. I have some
2,300 years. That's just my big issue. You're stretching it over 2,300 years, and you're telling me there's a daily going on, but where is it going on? Why did it get stopped? What? Okay, it was going on in 458, and then it gets stopped in 457. What was it? Where is it?
The reason it's associated with that is because it's a vision, and the time period of the start. When you see how the kazon and the mare are associated with each other, I'm telling you, watch the thing on Daniel 8 from Angels in the Glen. He gives visual aid really well, and he explains it really well, and he goes verse by verse, and he shows it. And I don't know, man. I know I'm biased, but like, it just seems like a really good explanation once you understand that there's the visions. There's 2 different visions there in the original language. I mean, they can be used interchangeably for vision, but the way they're used, you can't unsee it once you see it. And so, and when in fact that the text does say that the 2,300 days wouldn't be understood till the time of the end, and that language is associated.
But like okay. Then how did Ellen White understand if it's not understood?
Because they existed right to 1844. That's the beginning of the cleansing of the sanctuary.
So you say maybe it's still not understood because nothing ended.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, no, that's fair.
I mean, right? Because I mean, so
maybe we're not at the time of the end, and people are still getting it wrong. That's possible. Sure.
Right. And
but the argument, Chris, I'll stop at this. The argument is that that we know that the time of the end wasn't when they were saying it was Antiochus, and everybody was saying, like you said, it's Antiochus, and it says no one will understand till the time of the end.
Hold on, where
if
do you
they
see
understood
that time
it,
of the end at? Where do you see the words "time of the end" at?
let me see if I can find it.
Is it in Daniel 8?
Yeah, I think so. I believe so. Yeah. Let's see.
Because I know 8:26 says, "For
you
it
got to
shall
see
be
it with
after
the
many
cause
days."
zone too. He refers to the cause zone, and then he says, seal up the vision till the time of the end, something like that, maybe. Which you could associate with Daniel 9 too, but you could also associate the vision of Daniel 9:29 at Christ's second coming. How long shall the vision be? Let's see, it's past that. Okay, it fell in the pit. He said, "Understand, O Son of Man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision." That's one of them. There's another place where it says that. For at the time appointed the end shall be. I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. For at the time appointed the end shall be the ram which. Okay, so and in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance. This is where it's associated with Daniel 11, I think. A dark countenance shall stand up. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy wonderfully and shall prosper in practice. Destroy the holy people. Let's see. Stand up against the prince of princes. See, that to me, that suggests it's Jesus, and Jesus isn't even in the people's view yet. Who's the prince of princes in the context of when this was written? If it doesn't have, and the vision of the evening and the morning it was told, therefore shut up the vision, and it shall be for many days. Let's see.
Well, you could also say the prince of princes would be the Jews' people, or the
right.
Or the
and
God,
Jesus would be. He is the
the
prince of the Jews
by just treading into the temple. That would be you're standing up to the prince of princes.
Yeah, right.
That's
fair.
Like it's
that's fair. It is Michael, by the way, and because when you see it, the prince of the host in Daniel 11, that this power is standing against the prince of the host. The Hebrew phrase there is only one other place, and it's when Joshua meets Michael and he bows before him and takes off his sandals. Are you for us or are you against us? And it's the prince of the host, the same phrase as the one here, prince of the host. And it's only two places.
If you're arguing Michael might be Jesus, I mean, I'm not going to argue with that one.
It is.
There's some language in there, man, that makes it sound
like to be.
Could be or probably is. So
it has to be because Jesus is the prince of the host, and Jesus is the prince of Israel, and Michael's the captain of the host that protects Israel. So it's
there's one specific verse in the Bible that really makes me think they might be the same. I can't remember which.
Yeah, all the verses that I'm going to do a video on all the arguments, but all the ones people point like, well, it says he's one of the chief princes, so it can't be Jesus. Or in Jude, it says the Lord rebuke you. So Jesus wouldn't say the Lord rebuke you. He is the Lord. That's false. Literally it's Joshua. What is it? It's not Zechariah. Maybe it is Zechariah, but 2, I think. Zechariah 2 or 3. It literally says Joshua is standing there, and Satan was before the people. It says, and then it says the angel of Yahweh, I believe, says to Satan, "Yahweh rebuke you." Yahweh says, "Yahweh rebuke you." So yes, Michael can say the Lord rebuke you because he's talking about himself. He's talking about how he will come as the God-man Jesus, and will fully rebuke Satan when he accomplishes the new covenant. And so, yes, Yahweh says to Satan, "Yahweh rebuke you" in Zechariah. So that doesn't work. The chief of princes, it can be translated or better translated, the first of the princes. So Jesus is the prince of Israel. That's in the Bible too. So all the things that people think make it so you're downplaying Jesus because they're bigoted because they just hear you saying, "I'm a Jehovah's Witness and I think Jesus." No. So that's why I made my video that says I made to try to kind of like make an example and say, "Oh, look, evangelicals who don't think Michael is Jesus, just like the Jehovah's Witnesses think Michael's a created being. And likewise, the evangelicals agree with Jehovah's Witnesses. Michael is a created being." And I've made a little video and it was like 2 peas in a pod. I said, look at evangelicals butting up with the Jehovah's Witnesses because they both think Michael is a created being. I believe that God is the one that raises the dead, and Jesus doesn't have some other created being's voice to raise the dead. He has his own voice, which is the voice of Michael, because they're one and the same person.
No, and it says that's a good argument, man. I mean, I'm not, but hey, I think I agree with you with all that. But as far as like Daniel 8, I don't see nothing in the text that says that it's got to be till the time of the end, because it says
yeah, I'll see if I can find it. I don't have it off the top of my head,
because I just see it says and he said, behold, I will show thee. So he's going to show them.
No, yeah, no, that's that would be what I think. We have to look at I don't want to misspeak, so I'm not going to say anything, but I think because he says I think it's because I will say this. I think it's because you have to see the two different words and how they're associated with the 70 weeks and the 2,300 days. And when you see, I'm telling you, just go to Angels in the Glen, dude, Daniel 8, and he'll have cause zone in red and mare in red and cause zone in blue. And so he'll replace the word vision. He goes step by step in explaining and showing how they're being associated. It really kind of forces you to at least see an association with Daniel 70 weeks and because when you're just reading in English, it's like, oh, the vision, he's having these visions, and there's the one in Daniel 8, and then there's the one in Daniel 9. But remember, Daniel 8 bleeds into Daniel 9. There wasn't necessarily, they're both written in the same language. And so there's no break there. He's still wondering.
The break is when Daniel's stricken and sick. He's stricken and sick for certain days.
Yeah, it does. But see, the way so yes, it is a break because it's 2 years later. But it brings up what was being talked about, which is the visions that he didn't understand the interpretation. So in Daniel 9, I think it might be where it actually says it more clear. I don't remember. I'll find it and I'll make a video about it. But the point is, when you see the words being used, it ties the association with Daniel 8 undeniably, and that you see that they're connected. But you can't see that when it just says vision, because all you see is just kind of this loose. He's just having visions, and they may or may you don't see an association until you see how they are the two different words are used in their context. And it just, I'm telling you, watch at least some of it and see. It's very eye-opening. So I'm still learning about it. It's a lot to take in.
I'd have to have him on my show because there's just clear questions before I waste my time. Because I just don't see how you stretch this over 2,300 years. Like I said, you're talking about a daily sacrifice. Well, Jesus,
yeah, but dude, but
in 31 AD.
But Chris, Adventists didn't invent that the 2,300 days were years. That's in Christian history. Isaac Newton said that. And people way back said that.
Doing something different with those.
Yeah, different, but he still thought it was 2,300 years. So it's not a new. That didn't get invented to make it not Antiochus.
I'll have to look it up, but I mean, I would think that Isaac Newton would have thought this was already.
Okay, well, let me show you something. Really, I got to show you this, dude. You got to see it because it's not just a couple stray people here. Look at this. I did this cool thing where have you heard of Open GPT, Chat GPT thing? I did a thing where you can ask it questions. It's like a really advanced AI. And it's, check this out, man. This is really cool. Unless you're like, this kind of thing freaks you out maybe, but I think it's just a program. So, but it's like you can ask it questions, complicated questions, and it'll get like, you can watch this. This is amazing. All
right.
Okay. I got it right here. You got to see this. All right. Ask me a Bible question or just ask something called I'll do it. Let me do it. I'll get it started. Watch this.
Does Antiochus fulfill Daniel 8?
I asked it that. I asked it what about the 2,300 days, and it gives you a bunch of information. But watch this. Like, okay, give me pi to the 101st decimal. That's an easy one, right? Okay, give me every passage in the Bible about the day of the Lord that is in order from Genesis to Revelation. I have to wait till he's done. Then I can ask again. I mean, you can ask him about Greek words, any passage with this Greek word in it. Give me every verse with this and this and this, and it'll do it.
Well, that's very awesome. You said this thing's called Chat GPT.
Yeah, you can sign up. Yeah, dude. And I thought it would be cool to make videos where I ask the demon AI Bible prophecy questions, right? and it'll give you interpretation. Like, watch this. I'll skip that. Let's just do this. Give me Christian theologians over history that have interpreted the 2300 evenings and mornings, Daniel 8 is years. Is this amazing, dude? Is this amazing? Is this just amazing? This is like a tool, dude.
How about how many theologians said Daniel's 2300 evening and mornings are 1150 days?
Okay. 750, right?
Yeah.
Look at that. Tim LaHaye, like a lot of futurists actually think it's future. I mean, this is amazing. Look at this. It gives you some like good information. I thought, because I know there are some, so maybe I just said it in a weird way. Maybe I should just say.
Well, it looked like it interpreted it right.
Okay, yeah. So
I don't know why they didn't find any.
Let's ask this. Who is the prince of the covenant in Daniel 11?
Well, it looks like you got it right.
I mean, this thing could write sermons for you, dude. This is scary. I mean, this thing can do amazing stuff. This is just the tip of the iceberg, dude. You can ask it much more complex questions, and it gives you, and I mean, it's amazing. It's scary is what it is. Because I mean, this thing will write articles for you. It can write articles for you, dude. It could write your blog post for you. And this is free.
How likely it is that Daniel's 70th week is future.
Okay, let's see what it says.
I'm just curious.
It is interesting because it'll say stuff like it always will say like, well, there's many interpretations, so you must be careful, and different traditions will like, just be cautious and that sort of thing. It gives you that sort of answer. Let's see. Let's see we'll see what it says when I just ask it more generally. How likely is the 70th week of Daniel being a future event that has not yet occurred? I'm kind of surprised it didn't say that. Some said it was fulfilled with Christ, but it just
said, it is weird.
That's kind of weak.
I guess it depends on how you ask.
It must be Catholic. No, they believe that too, though. That's the thing.
Oh, futurism, yeah. I mean, is that what you're saying? Are you saying that Catholics believe futurism, right?
Well, I mean, a lot of Catholics, I think they have, there's different views or whatever, but I mean, I believe they invented the futurist view. I just think that a lot of people have understood it to be Jesus, even though they're Catholic, like just the lay people too, you know, and theologians. I mean, they're a huge group, right? I mean, they don't make you believe one thing.
I always just think of the Jesuit interpretation.
Yeah,
I kind of forget.
Yeah, because the thing is, that doesn't really matter if Catholics believe it or not, or what they believe. The point about the Jesuit thing is that it became a mainstream view during that period, and it was drawn out by these people who were invented essentially as a mission to end the Protestant Reformation. And I read that quote from that one guy, Guinness or whatever, on my show. A big thing that a quote from him was in my presentation. And it was like, he points it out, like two of the main thing was righteousness by faith. The story goes, Luther read, the just shall live by faith. And I was mentioning that earlier tonight, that, that's a quote from the Old Testament too, right? When Paul said that, it was in Habakkuk 2:4. He who is, prideful or whatever, and essentially like what Jesus taught about not being a hypocrite, basically. And then it says that even back then, so you lived by faith in the old covenant too, according to the prophets. So people think it's this new thing and it used to be works and now it's faith. It's like, no. But anyways, yeah, it's from Habakkuk, and that's what spurned Luther claimed, that he was like walking up on his knees or on his face or whatever, doing that stupid ritual or whatever. And he was like, that Bible verse just came to his mind like a bolt from heaven. The just shall live by faith. What am I doing? Crawling on my knees up these stairs. And that's, part of the mythos of the Protestant Reformation. And it's just, so anyway, I forget what my point was, but anyways. Oh, hey, there's Stephanie. I was just about to close it down, Stephanie, but what's up? How you doing? Can't hear you. It's not Daniel's week. What is it not? How dare you?
So are you using...
There you are.
Oh, Stephanie. Oh, that's Stephanie. Now I remember that, Stephanie.
I'll close this down. This is my favorite subject.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning, guys.
Hey, yeah, I got to be going like now, actually.
Okay. See you, man.
But Stephanie, you should stop by my channel sometime.
No, listen, I was listening to you yesterday, actually.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so I found your channel through Jamie's channel, and you were in Indianapolis. I'm from Indiana, so I lived in Indianapolis for like 15 years.
All right, I grew up here my whole life, so.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh, I was cracking up at how you explained, like, how can these people see that was me though, Chris? I believed every single bit of it until we started looking at the dates in the Bible. I mean, the dates tell us exactly what's going on.
Okay, so you saw my video about is futurism a lie of the Antichrist or something like that, right?
Yes.
Okay, that was the one I was curious about.
Oh, I have so much on that. I could go on. I mean, like, our family talks about this all the time.
Yeah, I just wonder what Donnie's response could possibly be to it.
He doesn't have any.
They don't have dates. They don't have dates. That's the problem. So that's where what happened to me too, being in dispensationalism, is that I just believed everything. I believe that there's a gap, and there's a gap here, and there's a gap there, and God called a time out. And no, that's not true.
You know what? He said he didn't even give me 31 AD. He said he'd give me 31 AD. I was like, if you give me 31 AD and say that's when Jesus got crucified, the argument's over.
I know, because it's 3.5 years after the 69th week.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, because I already got the Artaxerxes. Like, I don't think you can start with any other date. So I'm like, okay, if you're giving me that, why are we even going to debate?
Mm-hmm.
But right. I don't like, that's what I'm trying to understand. Like, do you guys not really comprehend everything?
They're OSAS too. They need Jesus to fulfill. I mean, everybody needs it, obviously, right? But like, if you're a Baptist, like to call it into any question that Jesus put an end to sin, in any sense, to want to say that he didn't fulfill that prophecy, which is what it's saying. You can't get around it. He has to be in the 70 weeks. I don't get why people don't see this. It's so clear. It's
very clear.
He has to die in the period, or he's not the savior.
I like how you have that your graph, Jamie, how you have the cross on the outside. I mean, that's such a clear picture that shows that. And once you understand Daniel, first of all, Daniel was given. This is like the best information that we could have from God. Like it's the actual wisdom and understanding with this calculation. But you're right. Like we can't even imagine like putting him outside of that. That doesn't even make sense. He wouldn't be everything that he is for us today. I mean,
yeah, if you're once saved, always saved, you should be all over this. Like there's Baptists that understand this right too. It's interesting because he's had him on the channel. I hope he looks into it more. I told him too, like I was just like, man, don't publish your book. We haven't talked yet. Like I'm telling you, man, there's problems with this like partial, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful. He's my friend. I just, it gets heated. Like I was in a discussion on that channel last night and he came in and I came back and I just not interested in arguing that way. Like, cause it's like, if you can't acknowledge the thing in Daniel, it's like, there's really no purpose in me trying to explore it any further. Like you'll never convince me. There's no way if I can be sure of anything in the Bible, it's like at this point, like for it not to be right, this Daniel thing, it would like, if you could convince me that it was wrong, like it's just not possible. I don't see how it could be possible. Like there's nothing you can show me that I haven't heard that even comes close to even undermining it at all, even a little bit.
Well, to me, it locks the whole Bible together.
Yes, it does. And also, I think the missing piece are the dates. You know how I talk about that, Jamie, last time when I was with you guys. I mean, it's so important because God gives us the dates. Like it's like a math, like when you were in school and you were in math class and you looked for the answers. I'm like dating myself right now, but you turn the page over and the answers were on the back of the page.
Yeah.
It's like that in the scripture. Like we literally have to go through and just turn the pages. The dates tell us the 77s. And I tried to email you, Jamie, and it didn't go through.
I tried to send you a message if you watched the video earlier, but it was a long, annoying video. But it just, if you go, I don't want to say it out loud on the stream.
No, that's fine.
It's
I'll put it
if you go to my YouTube channel and get it, and then just send it, but don't send it to the one on there because it's messed up. And I still need to change it. I will probably, but it's Outlook.
Yeah, I'll put mine in
Gmail. Okay, yeah, do that, and I'll send you an email
here so you can see it.
I'm definitely going to look at the dates because I have an article on that. So if you have, send me the article you're talking about. I have one too that actually confirms the 7-year and the Jubilee patterns. I have some articles on that, and it is. But like, see, the thing is, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I get so excited about this. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. So
I know you guys have been in here for a while.
People already don't really understand the cultural references, and it's in the Bible. But the Shemitah years, or the the sabbatical year cycle, which every 7 of those is a jubilee. Most people don't really know about that, and like many of their going into captivity has the association with their disobedience from Deuteronomy 30, the curses, and like in it, God, like the day for a year thing is part of it, but it's also associated with those cycles in Leviticus 23 through 25 about
exactly
like their punishments. And then so God has a cycle of years that he does in 7s, and people have noted this even today. It seems to operate like in the financial markets and stuff. I don't know much about that, but there is some case to be made about some of that. I don't know if I buy it, but because it seems to be more associated when God's running his covenant, and the first covenant has a different context. But it is interesting that may be something that's going on. But in the historicist view, the article I have shows that those events, the major history, like in 508 or whatever, Chris, by the way, too, I think lands on these these cycles of sevens as well. A lot of the key historicist dates land on those as well, and just the layout of the Bible, like she's mentioned, Stephanie's mentioned the other day.
Perfect order. Perfect order. I mean, it's all in there, right? I mean, you're right. It's perfect order of sevens. And so when you go to the Jubilee, like there's 4 keys to this, right? You have to know how the Jubilees lined up. And it was every 49 years. And that special 50th year was like a bridge from the 49th to the 50th. I just kind of explain it as a bridge, but yeah, so we're exactly 30. And I think you said that too, Jamie, that there were 30, exactly 30 Jubilees. But see, what people do is they just randomly throw out that there were Jubilees, 120 Jubilees, because they're getting that from Genesis, where God says, my spirit will always strive with me, and for 100, his days will be 120 years. I don't know if you've heard people say that, but
yeah, because it ends up being like close to
Jubilee
6,000.
right. Jubilee wasn't given until Leviticus after the Exodus.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there were no 120 Jubilees. So these are things that I learned in following the church, and I was explaining to you. But when you add the Jubilee from when the time it was given, and we know that it was given at the Exodus after they left Egypt. So you have to start with that year, the year of the Exodus, and count for every 49 years. But where the gap is, and this is where I was telling you guys last time too, there's a stop. They didn't celebrate Jubilee when they were in exile because they couldn't, because that was their punishment from Chronicles.
So they weren't, were they
tells
not
you,
running the cycles, where the cycles stopped running until
no,
the temple started?
yeah,
No, they can't. Okay,
right.
so they stopped and
They
started back
couldn't.
again. Okay, I've heard
Yes.
that. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Like I heard that in one of the
Yeah.
articles I was reading. So yeah, I wondered about that. So it is 49 years though. So the 50th year is the first year of the next cycle. Do you understand? I know there's a
Correct, but you don't
controversy.
count that.
Yes.
Yeah, you
Okay.
don't
Good.
count
Good.
that
That's
one.
how I understood it too. That's what makes the most sense, because it follows the Sabbath weekly pattern that God sets out at creation. Because people want to mingle that with the Hebrew calendar and associate it with the months and the new moons. And that the Genesis lays out the pattern. Just, it's very simple. And it's the same thing with Daniel's 70 weeks. People want to like change the years to 360 days and then manipulate it. And then you have to deal with the calendar changes and stuff when you do that. And it's very complicated. They claim it like lands on the right day, but they don't associate Jesus' ministry with it. And I'm not surprised, because they don't care about what Jesus taught as much as they just care about his death, which it matters that his death, brought atonement and all that. But the point is, I'm not surprised that a lot of that theology will not care to think that the 70th week includes his ministry and his teaching. But yes, this likewise, like, no, it's God made it simple. He probably knew that the calendar would be messed up and all that. He made it easy. Just count years. And they made it so they had to have their festivals in the spring. The Passover has to be in the spring. So it's simple. We just have to count years, and they're actually end up being real years, or close enough to where you can actually keep a calendar without having to figure out like the different calendars. And likewise with the Sabbath, it's every 7 days period. It's 1 7 cycle after the next. Don't change it. There's no non-days in a lunar month thing that people think. That's a mistake. He made it simple for a reason. So we're not standing for truth told Chris we were sloppy or like loose with it. It's like, no, not even close.
Oh, no. You guys are the most. I'm so excited. I found your guys' channels. This is the first time I've ever found anybody that believes that this Daniel's was given the information that for us to chart his coming, the coming Messiah. That's what we should be so excited. Like, this is my goal for this year, is that we should be so excited. We should be celebrating the 77s but yeah, we've turned it into an Antichrist week. I just want to take back that 7 so bad for God and be like,
I know, right?
no,
I know.
I
It's
yes, I just want to take it
historically in the
back.
Reformation, there's writers who wrote in the Reformation period leading up to the the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. Like people wrote about how they believed because of Daniel's prophecy. And everybody used to believe that it was Jesus, about Jesus. All the Protestants believed it was about Jesus, and they were historicists in that sense. See, that's what's so disappointing to me, because like I'll tell people about it, and there's so many weird views with the Left Behind and the false predictions and stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, this prophecy used to be a thing that people could look to and they respected scripture, but now it's been totally, largely because of what Christians have done to it, and it's an atrocity.
It is. It's like the most beautiful story. It makes me cry. Like sometimes we'll be taught, like my family loves this because once you know the pattern, then you can see all of what God is doing. It's like a love story. It's like his story of his family, like just like a journal, just like when you record your kids when they were good, you record your kids when they were bad. Like you can see their rebellious years. You can see when they were kicked out of the house. Like it's so amazing when you know this pattern and that it was already fulfilled and how it came about. It's
Yeah, it
so
proves the
awesome.
Bible,
But
and it really
there were
does. It gives you a reason to believe. It
yeah.
gives you a reason to trust God.
And there were 4 periods of 490 years. So this is what I was telling you, explaining the last time, is how my dad, how he was. So you have to understand, like my dad, he's left-handed and he loves numbers and math, and he's like in his 70s, right? But he's studied the Bible his whole life. But so one day he was reading about Passion Week, and that's when it all started. Is when he was reading Passion Week and about Passion Week, and he was thinking that Daniel's the calculation had to have been like another 490 years before this one. So when you start going back to the beginning and you add the begat ages, and he started adding the begat ages from Adam to Terah, and that was a full that gives you the year that Abram was born in 2000. So that was the first 1,000 years. So then you know how there's 1,000 years, right? Periods, like every day is 1,000 years. So there's 1,000
Yeah, I
years
love that.
starting
There's a
with
major pattern there, a major pattern of
yes,
the history
it
laid out in
starts with
creation.
yeah. So my
Every
dad
day.
started
Yeah, that's beautiful.
yeah, a day is 1,000 years. So yeah, so from the beginning from Adam to Terah was 2000. So 2000 or was 2008. So 2008 from and so my dad was thinking, wait a minute, it's what was it? Like a year's already gone by. Like 2 years have already gone by from Abram to Adam. So when you took 2 years, so it added up to 2008, and then you start, so 2 years backwards is 4008. So he did this chart,
Okay.
and that's what I want to send you.
Yes, cool. Yeah,
Is
do that, because I'm into
yeah,
this sort of. I'm a numbers guy too. Like I've always
when
been a
you
numbers
add it
guy.
up, oh yeah, oh awesome. So when you add it, so when you think about that, 2 years have already gone by. If Abram was born in 2000, and all the years from Adam to Terah adds up to 2008. So 2008 years are added up. So that means that 2 years have gone by. So that means that Adam was created in 4008. And that's not a coincidence that those numbers, like 4008,
Yeah.
it was the number of circumcision. So when you
Okay, I
take
got your
that,
email.
And then Jesus's name equals 888 in gematria.
oh, I didn't know that. Well,
Yeah, I
Jesus
think
was
in Greek.
born. That's so cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, I just kind of found that yesterday when I was doing all that research for that video, so came across that.
Oh, okay. And Jesus was born in 4. I know you guys are gonna scream at me.
No, I believe 4 BC.
No,
Oh,
I
okay.
see that as a possibility. I think 3
that's in
BC
the
is
numbers
possible, but
too.
40 seems
It's
like
in
it
the
lands better.
Jubilee.
Okay.
It's in the Jubilee. Yeah, I sent you that too, how my dad
Okay,
added
cool.
up. So
I'm not seeing your
that's
emails if
the
you send it
first
to
one.
Outlook. Did you send it to Outlook?
Oh.
Yeah, the problem I have with the 3 BC is like the evidence for the Revelation 12 actually landing on the perfect day, which is Tishri 1, which is pretty convincing to me. Oh, that guy emailed me, the guy from biblicalarchaeology.org, that I use his sources, and I was asking him if he'd do an interview. It looks like he emailed me back. Okay, let me see. Yeah, I don't see, I didn't get it. So I'm going to send you one from mine, one that's active right now. So I'll send it right now. But I'm going to close it down. So I want to give you guys the last words because I got to get something to drink.
I was just curious, Stephanie. So you believe in 3 BC, and what did you think about me? Oh, you believe in 4 BC?
It has to be 4 because
I was thinking so too. Okay, I heard Jamie say 3 BC. That's what kind of confused me.
Well, that's where I'm leaning, but I'm not. Just I'll explain it in a video or whatever. There's convincing evidence for it, but yeah, it seems like he'd only be 29 or something, which seems
you can't have that happen.
But it would be his 30th year. It would be his 30th year.
So he's going into. Remember, I'll have to get my notes, but I think that even a day in a year makes you go into the next year of your age.
Right.
So it's a day in a year. So he was 33 going into being 34. So that's where it gets like the math gets confusing, but the Jubilee proves that it was 4. And then also remember when and one of the disciples say something like, what do you mean you're going to raise this up in 3 days? This has been in
Hosea
building for
in 3 days he will raise us up. That's associated with his people.
In Matthew I think it was, and Jesus said he's going to raise it up in 3 days, and they said you're going to destroy this. This was in the making.
46 years.
Right.
46
so
years.
When you subtract that from knowing the Jubilee year before 30 was 19, the year 19. So knowing the Jubilee years, I'm going to send this to you. So you can do all of the math with just this Jubilee year. Everything adds up. Yeah.
I'd be interested in seeing that too.
Notice he says, what does he say? They say this temple took 46 years, and Jesus says, I'll raise it up in 3 days. 3 plus 46 is 49. That's a Jubilee. And a day is associated with the year in Daniel's 70 weeks. Think about that. He says in 3 days, I'll raise it up. And it took 46 years is what they tell him. I just find that interesting. That it's like it sets the day for a year principle in a weird way, like what do you call that, midrash or whatever kind of thing, or I forget what it's called, but it makes me wonder because it's like that's a Jubilee and it's a day, and he's associating the last 3 with the years. And there's a prophecy in, I think it's Hosea, and notice the typology of being the body of Christ, his people are the body of Christ, and like, a man and woman or one flesh, atonement, all that sort of language. And then and how like the people of God represent the Messiah, like God's talking about Israel, and then it goes to a singular pronoun, and then the New Testament quotes that, like, out of Egypt I called my son, and he's talking about Israel, but then it goes to a singular pronoun, and then the New Testament picks up on that because he called Jesus, they went into Egypt, right? So there's like a typology there. They're an example for us, and we're the body of Christ. They're the people of God, but I look at it as like the covenant people of God, but they're all in Christ if they're with God. And so in that sense, like there's the Israel and the church kind of, but they're just the covenant people of God. And then I would say and then Jesus is their representative, and that's where that language comes from. And likewise, I think it says in some of the Old Testament prophecies, after 3 days, it's like Israel speaking, he'll raise this up after 3 days. And from Jesus coming in the 4th day, the 4th millennium, until the Sabbath millennium, I would say that's why it's the day of the Lord. Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. His second coming will happen into the Sabbath millennium. And like from Jesus, so we're in the last days of the week of history. If you think of Jesus coming in the middle of the week of history of the 1,000-year period, he's the sun, the great light. John the Baptist was the moon, and then the saints are the stars. He knows them all by name, all that stuff. But it's actually 3 days essentially from the day Jesus came in the 4,000th millennium or whatever, and then 5, 6, 3rd day to the 7th. See, that would work, Chris, with inclusive counting, because 3,000-year periods until the resurrection of the dead, from Jesus coming, if you count a day for it is 1,000 years, it would be 3 days inclusive counting from that period of the fourth day of 1,000 years when Jesus came until his second coming. After 3 days, he'll raise this up. Everybody who died will be resurrected. That's how I look at it anyway. Because it's talking about the people. It's a prophecy, obviously, that you can relate to Jesus after 3 days, literal days, he's raised up, right? But it's also the people. It is the people talking. So this is something that came to my mind. I don't know. But hey, I said I'd give you the last words. Yeah, there's a bunch of patterns like that. I have a million of them, but you can't miss it, man.
And there's 4. Yeah. And there's a lot of patterns, but this one, the 77s, there's 4 77s. So when you start from the year that Abram was born to the Exodus is 490 years. From the Exodus to the first temple being built is 490 years. From the temple being destroyed to them being in exile, Nebuchadnezzar, and it tells you all these years on the 19th year of the 12th month of the 10th day, my dad was following this, right? So there's 4 periods of 490 years. Daniel is sitting in the third 490 year period. Looking,
Awesome.
and Gabriel comes to give him, here's what you're reading. He's reading, he can't, and I'm going back and forth with this. I used to think he's reading the book of Jeremiah, but he's actually with Jeremiah. So I think he's like reading back in Chronicles where it says 70 years you are going, because you guys are going to be punished. It's going to be 70 years that the land is going to lay desolate. I'm going back and forth with that because I have a problem with Daniel being with Jeremiah and Ezekiel. They were part of the 3 groups of people that were exiled. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's some issues like that.
Sense. Yeah, I think.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to let's explore that next time. But we'll have I'll email you. But I want to tell you there's some issues like that with the chronology in Nehemiah and Ezra too, as far as Ezra and Nehemiah's age and stuff, and if they were contemporaneous and stuff. But I haven't have that all worked out. But the what was I going to say?
But yeah, there's 4 of them. There's 4. He's sitting in the third period. And Gabriel's giving him the information for the last and fourth 490 years to the cutoff of the Messiah. So people don't understand that either. Is that, like, I used to be fooled into thinking, oh, here's the dates, just throwing out just different. But no, it's an actual.
It's very tight.
Years.
It's tight. It's not sloppy. It's
orderly.
Not here and there.
No, it's not.
There's 7
sloppy.
years here and there, and maybe that's part of that one, and we don't know. And yeah,
right.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna close her down. Thanks for coming, and I want to talk to you soon. I'll set up a stream maybe later today or something, but if you can join or whatever. But I'll email you.
Oh,
and good talking to you, Chris. Good to have you, man.
Good talking to you, Chris.
Yeah. Come on my show sometime, Stephanie.
I will. I learned so much from your show yesterday. You don't understand. I was writing down notes from the days, and there's so much that you said that was making me think of some other things, but it was so good. You do I subbed to your channel. You do so good, both of you guys.
All right. Well,
so I'm gonna play my new. I'm gonna play my. I'll send it to you. Yeah, send it to Chris.
I already sent you a message.
Oh,
send him my right email too. Send him my right email. I sent you an email too. Check out my new intro, outro, and see you later.
Hi guys.
I'm not who you think I am. Whoa. They call me soda pop can man. Whoa. And I don't do well with pressure. Such a friendly gesture now. Just keep me out of the freezer. And don't give me the cold shoulder. 'Cause I am just a fragile can. Whoa. You could crush me, crush me, crush me with your hand. So just stab me with your finger.